Hello and welcome to Friday night at the Big Cat Cafe.
I'm Duncan Carling-Rodgers.
And I'm Elizabeth Ellen Carter.
Tonight we're going to be talking about literary hoaxes. One was drawn to your attention by an associate earlier.
That's right, Shahan Moore, a fantastic historical romance writer from Scotland, drew my attention to an interesting article. A young woman by the name of Helene Hegeman at 17 winning the Leipzig prize, which I think was worth something like $20,000 worth, for a book she wrote called Axolotl Roadkill, which was heralded far and wide, but it turns out she cribbed bits from everywhere.
When you say cribbed, do you mean then that she was plagiarising bits of other books and putting them into her book?
Yeah, not just one. It's not like she cribbed an entire author's work as her own. She mixed, as she said, so taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that and
right.
Shaking it all up and
seeing what came out. Obviously she didn't mix the bits up well enough. This happened back in 2010, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly did. What was amazing is the judges at the Leipzig Book Fair loved the book so much that even being aware of the controversy, they awarded her the prize anyway.
What, so they actually discovered that it was a hoax before they awarded the prize?
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty amazing. Actually, this idea of literary fakes isn't anything new. It goes right back. It probably goes back even earlier than this, but one outstanding example is a chap by the name of William Henry Ireland, who in the late 1790s tried to get away with a fake of a play by William Shakespeare.
He was a teenager too when that happened.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, there may be a theme emerging there. Ireland's work was called Vortigern and Rowena, or Vortigern, an historical play. And it, like I said, it was supposed to be a newly discovered work by Shakespeare. He didn't get away with it. It was immediately identified as not being quite Shakespearean enough. And
I think the audience had its say too. I think it was roundly mocked when it was presented on stage.
Indeed, it got presented at the Drury Lane Theatre in London and laughed off the stage. I understand actually that Ireland tried to reinstate a writing career for himself later on and failed miserably.
Oh dear!
So he wasn't a good enough writer to get away with it. I mean, other people have been, in more recent times, coming back up into the 1980s, the West German magazine Stern published excerpts from the diaries of Adolf Hitler.
They paid 9 million marks for these books, apparently a collection of 60 small books.
Now 9 million marks, sort of, what's that worth? That's actually worth $3.8 million US.
Wow.
So they must have been really fooled, because that's a hefty amount.
It is. I don't think newspapers have that much money to spend on these things nowadays, do they?
No, they don't. Everybody was taken by that. That particular hoax was actually pulled by a journalist, and he claimed to have got the diaries from East Germany, because, of course, this was prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah,
it was turned up as a hoax fairly quickly.
But it's amazing. They went to the effort of doing handwriting analysis and doing some testing, although they were so keen to protect their scoop that they perhaps weren't as rigorous as they ought to have been.
Well, that happens quite a lot. There you go. There are actually examples of literary hoaxes closer to home for us here in Australia, aren't there?
Well, that's it. And also relating to the Second World War, a memoir called The Hand That Signed the Paper was supposedly part of the family history of Helen Demidenko.
Now, Helen Demidenko later came out as Helen Darville, which is her real name. She's now Helen Dale. Helen Dale.
Yeah, Helen Dale. She's married.
Yeah, and she's actually working as a media person for an Australian senator. So
maybe there's still fiction going around.
Possibly. I couldn't possibly say that, etc. But the Demidenko hoax, she made up part of her ethnic background, didn't she?
Well, yeah, and this is it. It was always a work of fiction, but what added this poignancy is it was based on this immigrant woman's sort of family connections, which leads me to the question of, does it invalidate the worth of the story itself? In the same way you've got TV shows and My Kitchen Rules and all of that, where you can't get on these shows no matter how good a cook you've got unless you've got a great backstory, a tragic story or a quirky personality to go with it. And I'm wondering if that was really what upset people.
Yeah, I think it was more a case of what offended the literary world was this writer presenting it as a true story of her family when it wasn't. Perhaps she was just simply afraid that the storytelling wasn't good enough.
A Million Little Pieces.
Oh, the great Oprah Book Club hoax.
Oh, when Oprah was at the height of her powers, any book she recommended shot to the top of the New York bestseller list, and James Frey was lucky enough to be caught up in that.
Right. Now this really was sold as a memoir, wasn't it?
It was. It's the story of a 23-year-old alcoholic and drug abuser and how he copes with rehab. Yes, it was much lauded, and how terribly brave the writer was, until it was discovered he made most of it up.
Right, and interesting to see the way in which both the author and his publisher handled it, because they then remarketed the book as a semi-fictional novel.
Yes, and this is where the lines get blurred between what is fiction and what is reality, and I really think there does have to be a clear distinction. I think memoirs have to be have to have a solid basis in fact. You start blurring the lines between what is real and what is not, you get into a big world of hurt.
Terrible mess. It's interesting that A Million Little Pieces was published by a division of Random House, because am I right in believing that Random House is the publisher of another current literary hoax, being Lena Dunham's book, Not That Kind of Girl?
Yes, indeed. It's a lot of people may not know who Lena Dunham is. She is the daughter of a couple of rich performance artists who's got her own TV show called Girls, who wrote a memoir called Not That Kind of Girl, who tells some very outrageous stories, including the fact that she was raped. She names her rapist by first name.
Well, and I'll correct you there, because you called that the fact that she was raped, but in fact, that piece of information is in dispute. Why is it in dispute? Give us the background.
Well, she identifies that she had an unsatisfactory sexual encounter with a fellow student whom she doesn't identify by full name, but gives enough details for anyone with an internet connection to find who it is. And it's not until later on when she recounts that story again is persuaded by friends, oh no, you were sexually assaulted. Oh, by golly, I must have been.
Right. So, putting aside for a moment any issues of the validity of the claim, what she's actually done then is she's identified this guy, but what has also happened in the past few weeks is that those researching some of the claims in the book, and they're not really even the most outrageous autobiographical claims she makes, but some of the people researching, trying to get more background on this assault accusation, have in fact discovered that it couldn't have actually happened at the time she said it happened, and in fact they're now backing away from it, Dunham and
Yes.
Random House, aren't they?
They are, and this is the thing. Of course, these days everybody with an internet connection fancies themselves their own detective, so it doesn't take too much searching to identify a possible suspect. And that was fairly well publicised about 6 weeks ago. Yet Dunham and Random House said absolutely nothing until the young man identified threatened to sue, and in fact had to set up crowdfunding to help fund his lawsuit, because he doesn't have the resources of the multi-million-dollar earning Dunham or Random House. Yeah,
that's interesting. It is quite amusing when you consider that this is possibly on the same scale, going right back as the Vortigern and Rowena hoax, because William Henry Ireland was paid, I believe, upwards of £300.
Back in the 18th century.
Yeah, he was paid a heck of a lot of money for the manuscript. Yeah, £1,300.
Sorry, 300.
Sorry, not 13. £300. And 50% of the revenue. So it's a profitable business, and maybe that's why it sort of explains why people are willing to go the hoax.
Well, maybe they don't believe the old adage that truth is stranger than fiction.
Is that what draws attention to it? The fact that it's so strange? Or just poorly written?
Well, you can only massage these things to a certain point, can't you?
Yes, indeed. Well, there we are. That's another Friday night at the Big Cat Cafe. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to make any comments, please do so at the bottom of this page.
Yes, please.
And it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me. Good night.